welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name's Katie and I'm a mixed media artist, and last year I started a daily art challenge where I paint 6 days a week and share them over on Instagram, and every couple of weeks here on YouTube I do a roundup and talk about the artwork that I've created. So in this video I'm going to be rounding up weeks 32 and 33, and I've got all my sketchbooks here ready to go. Lots of sketchbook work this time and a little bit of loose work, but I'm just going to head right into the video and I hope you enjoy it. So for week 32 and day 186, the week definitely started off on a low in terms of inspiration. I usually find that throughout the week my inspiration drops a little bit, so by Friday I'm generally flagging a little bit. But I find having the Saturday off, which is something that I worked into my schedule at the beginning, definitely helps to get me back on track. But it didn't quite work this week and I was still feeling a little bit stuck on the Sunday. So what I decided to do to get out of my funk, and I usually find helps, is to actually do some plein air drawing. And that's what I did for day 186. And I walked to my local nature reserve and did some plein air drawing in my A5 Talens sketchbook. So I've mentioned before that I don't always like the artwork that I create when I do plein air drawing, and it's similar with this one, although I do really like the colour palette of this one. It feels quite muted and a little bit autumnal, and it was still winter when I painted this, so we hadn't quite entered spring. But I really like the orangey tones that pairs with the browns and the greens. This was a route that we don't usually take at the nature reserve, and so I'd never stumbled upon this before. I think this is a bronze-aged stone roundhouse, and it just caught my eye and I thought that I wanted to draw it. Originally we'd walked around the lakes and I tried to find a place that I hadn't drawn before, because I've done it quite a few times there where I've sat down and drawn the lakes. But I really wanted to try something different, and so I did this little stone building. And I am pleased with how it turned out, considering it is a plein air piece. It feels very rough and loose, and I think that's often because I feel quite constrained with time, as well as like the weather and things. Overall, this did help me to get out of my funk. I always like the feeling of drawing outside, and it definitely helps to get a fresh perspective on things. So it was a good start to the week. Even though it's not something that I'd like get a print of or have framed or anything, it definitely helped to get me going. Day 187, I was in my A4 Royal Talens sketchbook, and I found a lot of National Geographic references on Pinterest, and I found a Tumblr actually that has all these pictures in, and so that's what I decided to draw on this day. And I'm so happy with this spread. I think this is one of my favourites from the couple of weeks. I really love the colour palette. It feels quite muted and like very natural, but it's also very vibrant and colourful. I'm extremely happy with the one on the left, so the big redwood trees and the tiny little car at the bottom. I just really like the texture there. And I think these were all done timed, so I think that always helps keep me loose and keep things a little bit messy, but I think that really adds to the character and texture of each of the pieces. This was done with my usual method of laying down a layer of gouache and then going in with NeoColor pastels and coloured pencils. But I think for this one it was mostly coloured pencils rather than NeoColor pastels over the top. I've worked a lot in panels before, but never in my A4 sketchbook. I usually do them in my smaller A5 ones. So this was quite different for me, but I was really happy with how this turned out. And like I said, I think this is one of my favourites for quite a long time. Day 188 is a loose piece which I did, and you'll have seen if you saw my vlog, so my most recent video I talked about this piece. And this is the one that went kind of viral on Twitter and had like 26,000 shares, and I've made it into a print in my Etsy shop, and I'll pop a link down below. But this was just a 20-minute study, so I was really surprised by how popular it was considering the effort that it took me. I was trying to keep things really loose, so this is all gouache. I did the raspberry background, which I've done before, and I just really like the warmth of that. I love the orange that's paired with it, and like the yellows and also the greens that really stand out against the contrast of the background. So to me, this isn't like the best thing I've ever done, so I was really surprised by how popular it's been. But I do like the warm tones that it gives, and it was nice to draw flowers again, which isn't something that I do, especially not in a vase in a setup like this. This was referenced from a copyright-free image, and as always I'll pop all the references for each of the days down below in the description box. So for day 189 I did something very different for me, and I tore some paper from a roll, taped it up to the wall over there, and just started painting. So these are the results, and these are two herons which I referenced, and it was a negative space painting, so I basically left the space for the heron's body and painted around it just to leave the shape there. And this was all done with acrylic paint, which I just mixed on an old plastic lid, and I didn't really think much when I was doing it. I was just really enjoying the process. And then I went in afterwards with some NeoColor pastels to add like the details on the wings and the body, the legs and the beak and the eyes. And like, they're not the most incredible birds or detailed or anything at all, but I had so much fun working in this way, and I think that's the most important thing when it comes to creativity, is that you're enjoying what you're doing. So although this felt very different for me, I was just having so much fun doing it, and it definitely reminded me that that's what art is about, and I definitely want to bring that more into my practice. Because I work so much in sketchbooks, it kind of does keep me quite tight, even though I'm always striving for looseness. So painting on the wall and like out of my desk definitely helped with that, and it's definitely something I want to do again. Day 190 was another spread in my A5 Royal Talens, and another one of these which I've done quite a few of, where I've drawn some wildlife and put them all into one spread like this. So this was mostly done with NeoColors and a little bit of gouache for the background, like the sky at the top. And I just really enjoy using NeoColors in this way. I know that I usually use it as like a details layer, so I always enjoy creating the spreads like this where it's mostly done with those pastels. And I also do this common blue butterfly and this one here in the middle, which is the female one. And I usually try and avoid drawing butterflies. I've always struggled with them. I think because it looks so obvious when it's wrong, like the wing shape, and obviously the pattern needs to be reflected. But I was really happy with these ones, and I'm glad like I got over that fear, which I know sounds ridiculous considering some of the things I draw, but I've always kind of stayed away from butterflies, so I'm glad I added them into this one. And I'm really happy with the dormouse and also some of the birds. So overall, like, it just feels quite a calming, peaceful spread, and I just really enjoy filling up my sketchbook pages with nature in this way. Day 191 is another piece which I mentioned in my recent vlog, and that is this tree template which I created for a patron only video. So I created this tree template and just drew like the trunks and the branches, and then I filmed myself chatting through like a real-time paint with me tutorial thing for my patrons, and filled in all of these trees and talked through how I actually painted them. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. I didn't expect to do it for my daily art that day, but I mean, that's the piece of art that I did create, so it kind of felt counterintuitive to not share it, considering that was the art I made that day. I think usually I would have created another piece which I deemed more Insta-worthy, but this was the daily art, and so I'm glad I'm sort of pushing past those limits that I place on myself. And I am really pleased with some of these trees. I particularly like this one and also this one here. And this was my first ever tutorial that I've done, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I had some lovely feedback from my patrons as well. When this video comes out, it will be the beginning of the month, and that's the perfect time to get the most content for your money. So if you have been thinking about joining my Patreon and want like the tutorial for how to draw these trees and exclusive sketchbook shares and exclusive videos and content and things like that, then I'll pop the link down below because your support is greatly appreciated. Okay, so on to week 33 now and day 192. I went again back into the National Geographic Tumblr that I found and did another 2 pieces that were referenced from those. And this is back in my A5 Royal Talens, and these were timed pieces again, and I took 15 minutes for the one on the left and 10 minutes for the one on the right. And again, I went with my usual method of gouache and then NeoColors and coloured pencils over the top. And again, I think I kind of caught the vintage vibe that these photos bring because they are from vintage National Geographic magazines. And I really like the terracotta panels that I've drawn. I really like that. That gives a little bit of warmth to the whole page, let alone the actual pictures themselves. So just little things like that definitely make a difference, because I think before most of my panels that I've done in my sketchbook have been drawn with just a grey pencil. And so just a little thing like that is something that I've learned I really enjoy, and so want to keep doing more of. So yeah, these were timed sketches, and I think out of the two of them I actually prefer this one, which is the 10-minute one. And I'm just really happy with the shadows. It's a very simple image, and it's not really something that I would have chosen as a normal reference, but I was just really taken by the shadows, and I think I captured those details really nicely. There's also just a nice texture to the whole piece, so I was really happy with this spread, and it also did really well on Instagram, which was nice. And yeah, I definitely want to create more things like this in the future. For day 193, I was a little bit stuck for inspiration again, but one of the Patreons that I'm part of, which is by Autumn Chu, she did a sketchbook session at the weekend where she hosts on Discord, and then people can go in and draw from the references that she sourced, and it's like a collective drawing date. And the one that they did on that weekend was inspired by Wes Anderson films, and I had a look through some of the references which Autumn had compiled, and this one of Moonrise Kingdom really caught my eye. So again, I did this in my A4 sketchbook, which I tend to grab a lot less than my A5 one. And when I was painting this, I was really worried it would be pretty boring because it's just such a huge expanse of sky. So I added in like a little bit more colour and a bit more clouds than there actually was in the reference picture. And I think that definitely helped. But I think the whole spread kind of gives a children's picture book vibe. And there's just something really naive about it that I really like. I'm happy with the colours, and I definitely kept it really loose with some of the line work. Again, this was done with gouache, and I didn't sketch first, which I always find helps keep me loose and not worry so much about the end result. But I really like some of the details, like on the flags and the car, and also the signage on the house as well. I haven't actually seen this film, but I have seen a couple of other Wes Anderson movies, but I've heard really good things, so I'm going to add this to my to-watch list. So yeah, pretty basic for this day, but it was nice to do something quite easy and simple. One of the good things about referencing from films is that you don't have to think about the layout or anything, because the director's already done that for you. So you can literally just copy the screenshot. And yeah, this was just a nice way to ease myself back into it. For day 194, I did another Pacific Coast Highway spread in my tiny 12x12 sketchbook. And again, I talked about this in my vlog, and if you want to watch the process for this one, then you can see all of it in my vlog, which I'll link down below. But this was an interactive sort of choose your own adventure thing I ran on my Instagram stories, and I'm going to be doing it every week. And it's basically just where I put some polls up on Instagram about the route and place that I've chosen along this virtual road trip which I'm doing along the Pacific Coast Highway in California. And basically I put a few polls up, and then my audience then decides which view or which way I go, and it's just a really nice way to get that interaction and include my audience in my sketchbook. And I'm really happy with these. I think this one over here is my favourite just because it's so bold. But it's just a really nice bright spread, and I always really enjoy these virtual road trip ones. They feel quite easy for me to do, and I particularly enjoyed this one because it felt like it wasn't just me on this adventure, and I could include everybody else. Day 195 was back in the A5 sketchbook, and I did another timed piece of this black grouse. So I tend to always go for timed challenges and like set myself timed goals, because it definitely helps to stop me from overthinking. And if I'm stuck for what to draw, if I give myself a time limit and so I know it will only take me this long, it really helps me to not overthink and not worry about the end result. And that's what's happened here. I was uploading my video for Patreon and I had 14 minutes left on the YouTube upload, and so I decided to use that time and use a reference from a new book which I bought and drew this black grouse. Again, there was no sketching beforehand because I think with timers you have a lot less time to worry about that. And so that definitely meant like the proportions a little bit out, but I really love that because I tend to try and make things look quite realistic. So when I then don't sketch or anything, it becomes a little bit more stylized, which is what I'm always trying to achieve. So he's got a tiny head up here and then this lovely like plumage, and it just felt really nice and easy for me. It kind of reminds me of the chicken I did earlier in this sketchbook, and I was just really happy with this one. It didn't perform very well on Instagram, and I'm not really sure why, but for me, I really had a lot of fun with this one, and I really love the texture that's come about. Again, this was done with gouache and then coloured pencils and NeoColors on top, which is definitely my like comfort zone when it comes to art materials, and I was just really happy with how this one turned out. So I was running out of pages in my A5 Talens sketchbook, and so for day 196 I've actually started my new one, and even though I hadn't finished that one at the time, I wanted something that was fresh and clean, and I didn't want to just shove it in the back of that one. So I did actually work in two sketchbooks for this day. I did it in this smaller A5 one and my large A4 one. And I've worked in this way before where I work in tandem, so I basically paint at the same time. I use the same palette and the same colours that I've mixed up and do a layer each in each book, and I'm really happy with how these turned out. There's definitely things that I learnt from doing one that I then don't do on the other, which is why I like working in that way. So for example, on the big one, I painted in a big yellow boat here, and it was like a working sort of barge boat thing, and it just didn't look right to me. It was too bold and it was taking too much of the focus. So I actually covered it up with more paint and then put this little speedboat in there. But it meant that I knew not to put that onto the smaller one, and so I kind of shifted things about that wasn't in the reference picture. And like I said, that was from Google Maps, so it was like a real life view, but it definitely taught me that you don't have to copy a reference exactly. You can move things about to make it work better for your sketchbook or whatever piece of art you're making. You have the artistic liberty to actually change things. So I'm really happy with these two. There's definitely elements I like from each. I really like the softness of like the sky here. It definitely gives it like a sunset vibe, and it feels very like chilled and calm. Whereas this one, I still like that I didn't actually fill in the sky. It feels like it balances the piece quite well, but I'm really happy with these houses at the top. I really love that I've been able to add in more detail, which I couldn't achieve in the small one. So if you haven't worked on two paintings at the same time in two different sketchbooks, I really recommend it because it definitely helps you make different decisions on both, even though you're kind of doing the exact same thing. So day 197, I again did another plein air drawing, and this was because I went into my local town and I had to do some errands, and it was such a lovely day. We had such gorgeous weather in the UK that week, and so I wanted to just sit in the park and draw a view. So it took me quite a while to find a view which I was happy with, and in the end, like, the car parking ticket was running out, so I kind of just had to sit down and find a view from a bench where I was comfortable to sit at. And so this wouldn't really be a view which I would normally pick, but I'm glad it kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone. So it is very messy and dirty and not something that I'm very proud of. Again, it was done plein air, which definitely changes my drawing technique. But I am really happy with some of the elements, like this big tree. I really like how that one turned out with the shape. I think I caught that really nicely. And this was obviously done plein air, so if you did want to see the reference, I did take a photo of it and you can see that in the Instagram post that I posted for this day. But I really like some of the details, like the lamppost and like the leaves and then this little house here. But overall I think it's a little bit messy for me. So not one of my favourite spreads, but again it was really nice to draw plein air. So that rounds up weeks 32 and 33 of my daily art challenge. Like I said, I think my favourite is definitely that A4 spread with the panels. I'm really happy with how that one turned out with all the National Geographic magazines, and that's definitely been a reference source I've been enjoying lately. I'd love to know which is your favourite down below, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video and learning more about my thoughts behind each piece. If you want to follow them as I create them, then I do post them every day on Instagram, and I'll pop a link down below. You can find me at Katie_Moody. I'll also pop a link to the playlist for all the other daily art videos, and there are also plenty of speed paints and vlogs and other journaling videos on my channel if you want something else to watch. I hope you have a really lovely week, and I will see you next Sunday with a new video. See you later!